I think it's an important conversation because a lot of people love boxing. I do love boxing. I love going to
It's a beautiful sport. It's just, I just wish the brain damage didn't come with it. Like, because it is an art. Um, the way the fighters move, it's a chess game. It's brilliant, but it's just the brain damage is the part that I don't like about it.
totally. And I wonder if that like if that is something that can be minimized and prevented more or less, or if it's like does that get accelerated when boxers just like fight for too long? When they, I don't know if there's
I,
elements like that.
I think it's definitely when they fight too long. Like, and that goes is why do they fight too long? It's because they need the money. Like, when you hear a fighter's making 100 grand, he's really not making 100 grand. He's making like he's lucky if they're taking home 35% after taxes and paying the trainer, paying the promoter, not paying the manager for their expenses, gym dues. Um, so I don't know. I just don't think that the risk is worth the reward. It's very few people that make the money that Mike made, that Mayweather makes. Um, then you go to the MMA side, like McGregor, but you could see the MMA guys are getting totally ripped off. It's a new sport, so
Hey biohackers, welcome back to Biohack with Bailey. Today I am having the pleasure of interviewing the celebrity boxing trainer Matt Biamonte. Matt is based in LA. He is an exceptional human being. He was mentored by the legendary Angelo Dundee, and he is now based in LA, training many different celebrities as well as boxers. And in this episode, we get into how he overcame his traumatic childhood of being surrounded by addiction, criminal activity, lost his parents at a very young age, and then was able to overcome all of that through sports and eventually boxing and personal training to now be one of the top trainers around. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Can't wait to hear more about your story.
boxing trainer. I go boxing trainer always won.
Boxing trainer number one. Yeah, give
Yeah,
give us the
every
give us the intro. How do you represent yourself?
I'm always a boxing trainer above all. I've owned gyms, but to me, boxing trainer is my favorite thing. Celebrity trainer, trained athletes in different sports. That's it. That's my titles.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to do a fitness session sometime soon.
Me too. It's been a while.
Yay.
Yeah,
So, we just did a breathwork exercise. How was that for you?
that was great. That was something I definitely needed. I was so happy when you reached out to me. I'm like, like it's something I definitely I think everybody needs to work on. And then, like I really would just been thinking about it over the past few months. I'm like, man, I need to get my breathing back. Like I just haven't really done anything. And then you sent me that message, and I'm just like, it's a sign. So thank you so much for reaching out to me.
Yay, I'm happy that it was impactful for you. I find great impact. For context for everyone listening, I have known Matt for some years now through my parents, through my dad in the boxing scene. And this podcast is largely about overcoming obstacles, could be trauma, could be limiting beliefs, could be anything in between there, and then utilizing different tools of biohacking for optimizing for a state of thrive. So it's very fitting that you are on here, being that you have quite the background in personal training
Yeah,
and
and trauma. Had a lot of trauma
and
as a child. So that's something that
wow.
I don't even know if I ever shared that with you, but we'll talk about it more as that goes on in the podcast today.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy the thing with trauma, like every person, I mean, I started this podcast as a way to share kind of my journey of overcoming trauma through different kind of modalities and stuff, but then also to create a space for people to talk about it because trauma is something that I feel we all experience, kind of just part of being human. And it's not something we often talk about. I know for myself, I didn't talk about it for a long time because I was like not wanting to seem damaged or broken or something like that. But the more that I've gotten comfortable with talking about it, the more I find that pretty much every single person has a history with trauma in some way, that has impacted the way that we live our lives. So it makes me passionate about talking about that in this setting, and then also highlighting or featuring different people such as yourself who have created massively successful lives. You know, you've made a massively successful life for yourself doing what you love and helping other people improve their quality of life through fitness and personal training. So I'm keen to hear about the kind of journey from the trauma background, and then maybe how that may have motivated you, or how, like, what your journey to where you are now is.
Yeah. So I don't think you and I have ever discussed it. I know I've discussed it with your dad on a couple of occasions, but when I was a child, my father was a heroin addict, bank robber, thief, associated himself with the mob on occasions when he needed to. Basically, I think when I was 4, he got arrested for robbing a bank and went away to jail for quite some time. Gets out of jail, gets hooked on heroin. And at a very, very young age, he used to make me go to, now this is all up in New York, he used to make me go to pop heroin with him. So I was like a 7-year-old kid, and he's taking me into heroin dens to go get heroin, leaving me locked in cars, just pawning everything that we had so he can go get his fix. Then he would disappear for years at a time, get arrested again, go to jail. And then when I was old enough to drive, he used to make me drive him to go get heroin and drugs and all that stuff. And, you know, when you're a kid, you really don't know any better. And then when you have a guy like that, you're kind of scared and intimidated. So it's like, you're not going to tell him no. So he literally would make me take off of school to go get his drugs with him. And then finally in high school, he wound up getting in trouble again. We had moved to Virginia, and he had told me, "Oh, we're going to move there. We're going to clean. I'm going to clean my life up." And not even 6 months of him living there, he gets arrested and gets sent to jail. And by that time, middle school is when I found out that he was HIV positive, from the sharing of the needles. And then he wound up going to jail in high school. And then he wound up dying in jail of HIV AIDS when I was 17, 18. By that time, him and my mom had divorced, so I went to go live with her. She had moved to Florida. She had had enough. And then I think like 3 months after I moved in with her in Florida, 4 months, we found out that she was also HIV positive from him. And then I wound up losing my mom when I was 23. So dad when I was 18, mom when I was 23. Yeah, so that was like definitely like a traumatic childhood. Like, I didn't realize till later on, he told me that he would literally take my sister and myself into banks, and he wasn't there to go to open up an account like we thought he was. He was going there to scope out the bank to see where the cameras were, how many security guards were there. Like, it was just a crazy, crazy childhood. And then I remember the day he got sent to jail, I was like, hallelujah. Like, at that point, like, he was just so erratic in his actions. And like, it was like, that was when I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Cause at that point I was like, I'm not going to make it till I'm 30. Like, I'm just going to get involved in all this nonsense, and he's going to get me killed, or he's going to turn me into, I would never do the drug thing, but I wouldn't say the criminal stuff would be more of what I think he was trying to push me towards, slowly push me into it without me even knowing it. Like, he would steal things, and I would be in the car, and he's like, "Oh, you wait in the car. I got to go get something." And then I would he goes, okay, we're going to go. Let's go. Hurry up. We got to get to the next place. And then he's like, yeah, I just robbed that store. Like, and I had no clue. So
Wow. What do you
later on
think?
in life, I just, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Um, and then from there, I just was when I started seeing light at the end of the tunnels when he went to jail and then finally wound up passing away. Is like, I know it sounds bad, but it was like a ton of bricks taken off my back.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I can imagine, but obviously it's pretty hard to imagine something like that unless you've actually lived it. But what do you think? Like, did he ever share anything about his upbringing with you? Like, where do you think that he was so kind of troubled in those ways from?
I try to. Well, he lost his dad when he was 5. He was the second youngest out of 10 kids, I believe. But my grandmother was like, she was one of the most loving people. Like he had definitely had a lot of love around him. Um, so I'm not sure where he got all of that from. Um, I think that I think he got high off of doing the criminal activity, and then somehow he got hooked onto the drugs, and then the drugs just took over that part because he was before he got onto the drugs and started doing the criminal stuff. He was pretty successful in business. He had a bar. He had Tropicana routes when he was younger, and he was making great money. I never understood why he just started robbing banks. And I think I look now back at the addiction. Like I think his addiction was just he'd get high off of the rush of robbing something or doing something like that.
Yeah. Wow. I wonder. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like it's just hard to speculate on something like that. Like my logic is like maybe he lost money and then started robbing banks to try to make ends
That
meet or something.
that's what I thought. And then the more I hear, the more I got older, the more the stories now like that's the one thing I kind of wish my family, my aunts and uncles and older cousins would have just been honest with me and told me all of the stuff that he did because he did a lot of stuff. Like even I think he told me later on in life, like when I was born, he the next day he went around, he had bought a brand new Cadillac and he's driving around the neighborhood screaming and yelling, I had a son, and I guess somebody on the block wherever he was at started throwing rocks and hit his new car. So he gets mad, he turns around, he runs them over, doesn't kill them, but runs them over. He gets arrested, but he knew he was going to get arrested, so he dyed his hair, and then he wound up getting away with it because they couldn't identify him. So it's just he was just a total maniac.
Yeah, just a troubled human.
Yeah,
Wow. And how did that impact you, like in your, say, teen years and kind of your identity forming years and stuff like that?
it had good points and bad points. The bad points was I had a very bad temper. I was angry at the world. Um, the good points was it all sounds kind of crazy, but when you're in this situation, it's a good point. Is I didn't really want to be at the house, so I just dove into playing sports and not really realizing that that's what saved me playing high school football, track, and just not wanting to be home and just focusing, wanting to like. I was always a small kid. I was only, maybe 130 pounds, soaking wet. My dad was like 5'9". I'm only 5'7", so like I always worked out because I just wanted to get stronger. So if the situation did arise where him and I got into it, I could handle myself. And that's why I started kind of getting into the boxing, into the weightlifting, into the playing sports, because I just felt that one day it's going to come down to blows with me and him, which it did later on, and right before he went to jail.
Wow. And so then you guys got into like a physical fight?
Yeah, and it was funny because the whole time, like, I can honestly say I think he only hit me twice as a kid, which is to me is too many times. But and it wasn't like it was just out of a reaction because him and my mom got into a fight. My mom was trying to open the car door to pull us out, and I opened the door, so he just turned around and kind of slapped me, says, "Don't do that." But besides that, he never got physical. But the way I would see him be physical with other people and hear the stories. It just scared me. And we got into a fight in high school, and it was right before he went away. And I remember, like, I knew I could beat him up. But this was, you got to figure, this is the beginning of HIV/AIDS. This was 19. We found out, I think it was 87 with him or 86. So it's kind of figure that's the beginning. So like it was just around 1990. There's still we didn't really know what was going on with HIV/AIDS. So like if you were to breathe on somebody or you drank out of the glass, you were getting it so I was petrified the whole time. Like I didn't want to drink out of the glass of water he drank out of, like, and then I remember we're fighting and I lifted him up and I knew I could just kind of toss him. And then I was like thinking, if I hit him and he bleeds and he gets on me, that's going to be the end of me. I'm going to get HIV/AIDS, which was, now we find out, it's a little bit different from then. And I was kind of beating him, and then he went over I shoved him by his dresser, and then he went and he pulled out a gun on me. And then I was just like, okay, well, I'm not going to win this fight.
Wow. And have you had, like, it impacted you in that you got quite a temper and stuff like that? Would you get like flashbacks to that? Or what kind of things have you done to work through the emotions or the kind of psychological impact of something of that nature?
Well, it took me a long time. I didn't want to go see a therapist because I was brought up that if you go see a therapist or talk to anybody about it, that's a sign of weakness. When it's the other way around, is if you don't want to go talk to somebody, that's weakness. Like, everybody has issues. It's okay to go get help and talk to a therapist. I didn't want to do it because I was brought up in the old strong Italian neighborhood where you don't go see a therapist, you don't cry, you don't show any signs of hurt. So that for me took me over. I mean, God, I say, like, in my timeline is when my dad died until I went to therapy. It was probably over 10 years maybe. But if you think about it, I should have been going to therapy since I was a child. But in my timeline, it's when my dad was out of my life. And because that's when it all kind of hit me. And then when my mom died, that was like, okay, you're 23, you have nobody to back you up for anything. Like, there's a lot of thoughts that went through my head at that point. Like, okay, if I lose my job, I don't have anybody to kind of bail me out, which was like a major issue for me. So I just engulfed myself in work. So I had 2 jobs. I worked at a car dealership during the day, and then at night I worked at a nightclub, and I was going to college. So I'd say for 4 or 5 years, I really didn't have time to think about it. It's when I stopped working at the nightclub and stopped going to school is when it all just hit me like, oh, you had a pretty fucked up life. Sorry, I don't know. Lost you.
No worries. Your head just disappeared from my screen. I was like, and he's out.
Yeah, no, the whole thing just shut down.
Yeah, so basically, like, as you were saying, that's kind of growing up in that environment and all of that was one of the main things that motivated you to get into sports. Do you feel like you had like a healthy relationship with sports, for example, or with work? Or do you feel like there was like maybe overexerting yourself trying to work through some of that?
I always loved sports. I think it just made me better. I know it sounds weird, but like I said, when you're in the situation, like even though I look back at it now, I'm like, I wouldn't have changed it because I made a lot of great friends when I played sports. I had a lot of fun. It wasn't something that I forced myself. Like, I didn't force myself to go play football. It was something I did as a kid. Track is something I always loved to do, so I did that in high school. It was never something that like I was forced into doing it just to get out of the house. It just made me, I think, a better athlete. And then it wound up, once I started learning the boxing, I think that calmed me down a lot because you start to, I mean, I think your dad will will agree with me on this, is when you learn how to fight, you really don't want to fight anymore because you know the damage that can be done. When you don't know, it's just like, I'll just get into a fight today. And then when you know you could actually really hurt somebody and the damage that you could actually do for real, then you don't really want to get into fights. Like, you don't really hear of too many boxers getting into street fights unless they're severely provoked by somebody else. But I think playing sports, I think, calmed me down a lot, taught me patience, taught me compassion, which is something I didn't have before because I was just mad at the world and I was angry at everybody else is having a good life and I had to have such a shitty life.
Yeah. So what do you think, like what you were just referring to is a little bit about something I've been moving through in the past year or so, is like a mindset of a victim kind of thing. Like if you experience some deeply traumatic stuff, in my experience anyway, I felt a little bit like, why does this keep happening to me? Like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my life? This kind of thing. And then I started working with this woman that was like, the best thing you can do for your healing journey is to drop the victim mindset. And
100%. When you play victim, I think a lot of the people don't realize that it's taking away from your growing, because I don't know, it's kind of like, I don't know, I just don't believe in the whole victim thing. Like when I hear, oh, well, they had such a rough childhood, this is why the way they act, and I'm just like, yeah, I get it for a certain period of time until you grow and you get older. And as you get older, I feel like you know the difference from right and wrong. There's no like, oh, he didn't know, she didn't know. You know the differences between right and wrong. Like, so after a while, like I get as a child, like you got to have a little compassion, a lot of compassion for children. Even the teenage years, the young years, like your early 20s. But once you start getting into the mid 20s, early 30s, 40s, and so on, like there's no need to play victim anymore. Like, don't do it. Like, you know the difference between right and wrong. I knew what my dad was doing, was robbing banks and all the stuff he was doing as a kid and drugs. I knew that was wrong back then. Now, why would I want to turn around as an adult and do the same thing? Like, I don't, oh, that's all he knew. No, that's not all I knew, because you're gonna meet at least one good person in your life. And I don't believe that any adult does not know the difference between right and wrong and what they should or shouldn't be doing. Like, they're like, oh, you have to, the addiction runs in your family. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, you become an addict because this seems cruel and harsh. Like, don't do the drugs. You know, drugs are bad for you. If you want to try it, go ahead and experiment. But like after that, like you have to know deep down in your heart that there is a chance that you could become addicted to this. And I get like everybody has different traumas and everybody deals with it a different way, and try to do something positive. Like, I really believe that sports saved me. If I didn't have sports, I don't know where, maybe I would have did something different. But to me, sports was it, man. Like, I just jumped in the weight room, played football, and just had fun. I think I took a lot of my anger out when I was playing football because I knew I can hit somebody and not get in trouble for it, if that makes sense.
And maybe also like the sense of community, and also in sport
Yeah, it
too,
was my family.
good morals and stuff like that, and how to be like a team player, and just a sense of belonging. Like it sounds like with the kind of family upbringing that you experienced, yeah, sports, people.
Yeah, and I believe that you brought up a great point about community. Like, I think my high school football team, we were really like brothers. Like, I remember we were getting into fights with the other teams like every other week. I played high school football for a beach town out in Far Rockaway, and if somebody even hit one of my teammates the wrong way, it was a full out brawl on the field. And I didn't feel like I was getting that at home. I don't think any of us did, because we were all poor and broke and living in the hood, man. It wasn't like we were living like in Beverly Hills or something like that, where you get stuff hand fed. Like, we were going to school hungry. To go to school hungry is bad. Like, so that's where I think you pushed on a really good point there, is that the sense of community, the sense of family, of people loving you. when you're not getting that love at home.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, well, whether it's with sports or art or whatever, I've been researching into like the health benefits of creative expression also, which is like similar to the sports and breath work and all these things, but it's like um, confidence, empathy, belonging, like all of what you're talking about. That is basically, yeah, I think with, wouldn't you say that with boxers in general, maybe a lot of prime athletes, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about just like really high performing individuals in general. But I know with my experience around boxers, a lot of the ones that actually really thrive in their career came from quite traumatic upbringings.
Yeah, because I think that they're doing the same thing I did, is they're spending all the time in the gym. Um, but I kind of, here's where I kind of love boxing and I hate it, is because they tell the fighters, like, this is the only way you're going to get out of your situation of being poor and being broke, is you got to use your hands. And I'm like, no, use your mind. Like, you could have hands like Mike Tyson. Look, he got all of his money and they took advantage of him. So he lost in both situations. Thank God he's finally found, he talks about being humble, and the way he's living right now is a lot better than the way he was living when he was a child. And I mean, think about having all that money when you're a kid, and that everybody you finally think you're doing well in life, and then you find out 80% of the people around you are just trying to rob your money. Like, so I don't believe in that whole thing. Boxing saves lives. Like, use your head. Like, I get you want to take your frustrations out, but then it's kind of like you look at the other part of boxing, which a lot of people don't talk about, which I think needs to be. And I mean, your dad and I definitely talked about this, and I know your dad does the healing of the brain and all of his work that he does down in Costa Rica with trying to rehab these fighters, and like, they don't care about the fighters. Like, so when they say, oh, the only way the fighters could get out of their situations, they use their hands. Nah, man, I was in that situation. Like, I decided to use my brain, get like to where I'm at now from where I started. Like, I lived on a couch. We had no heat in the house. We had government cheese. Like, we had no heat. We would all sleep in front of the oven and turn the oven on, and that was our heat. We had no hot water. Now I'm blessed to have clients fly me around on private planes, and like, I have all my faculties. Like, I don't slur my speech. I don't, you've seen it all. You've gone to the Hall of Fames with your dad, and you see these fighters and they could barely tie their shoes and they don't know who they are. Like, so that's where I kind of love boxing, and I hate it. Like, it did save me. It put me where I'm at now, because now I just teach it to business people and other athletes in different sports. But as far as the whole boxing thing, I'm kind of have my mixed emotions about it.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. It's hard. That's why I am really passionate about the project that my dad's been working on with that, because when we go to these conferences and meet these legendary boxers, I mean, they're some of my favorite people I've ever met in my life. Just so kind, so gentle, so like, I don't know, just gracious people. And a lot of them have been hugely taken advantage of. Mike
Yeah.
Tyson as an example, but a lot, I mean, my dad experienced stuff like that. I know a lot of them do. And it's like with a traumatic upbringing, not very much education in terms of money management and stuff like that. And then people just, yeah, are kind of like sacrificing their brain and body for entertainment, and then taking the money that they earn with that brain and body and like discipline and heart. So yeah, I see the bittersweet side of it for sure. And I think that that's why just talking about it more, and maybe some more preventative medicine, some more like things like breath work, or some of the other modalities that he's talking about in the TKO project, is like, I think it's an important conversation, because a lot of people love boxing. I do love boxing. I love going to
It's a beautiful sport. It's just, I just wish the brain damage didn't come with it. Like, because it is an art. Um, the way the fighters move, it's a chess game. It's brilliant, but it's just the brain damage is the part that I don't like about it.
Totally. And I wonder if that, like if that is something that can be minimized and prevented more or less, or if it's like, does that get accelerated when boxers just like fight for too long? When they, I don't know if there's
I,
elements like that.
I think it's definitely when they fight too long. Like, and that goes is why do they fight too long? It's because they need the money. Like, when you hear a fighter's making 100 grand, he's really not making 100 grand. He's making like he's lucky if they're taking home 35% after taxes and paying the trainer, paying the promoter, not paying the manager for their expenses, gym dues. So I don't know. I just don't think that the risk is worth the reward. It's very few people that make the money that Mike made, that Mayweather makes. Um, then you go to the MMA side, like McGregor, but you could see the MMA guys are getting totally ripped off. It's a new sport, so they're not too hip to what they should be getting paid and how much money that, like, say, the UFC's making, and what they pay their fighters. There's no health insurance for fighters. There's no retirement fund. It's not like the NFL, the NBA, or the Major League Baseball or hockey. Like, there's no unions, so they could be making $400 one fight, which is nothing. Which is usually what. Now I'd say maybe you're lucky if you get $1,000 for your first fight, unless you do something like Jake Paul did, which I know a lot of people are hating on him, but hey, man, the kid built up his YouTube platform, his social media platform, and he's bringing awareness that the fighters aren't get paid. So, man, good for him.
Yeah, yeah, I think all of that. I mean, there's got to be a way to set up like health insurance and life insurance and all these things for somebody who's doing like the amount of people that make money off of them and their devotion to the sport. It's just like any other sport in that way. Like there should be protective mechanisms in place to help support these people. But do you think with the work that you've been doing with celebrities and stuff with the personal training, do you see like an element of maybe like a traumatic background or something that maybe drove them to be so kind of dedicated to achieving that level of success?
Yeah, poverty. I think poverty is definitely a traumatic thing. If you've never lived in poverty, it's one of the most traumatic things that a child could go through. Like I said before, like when you have to go to school on a hungry stomach, you're wearing the same clothes day after day, and you're getting teased in school. All of that stuff adds up. A lot of things that people that have money don't realize what goes on, like not having enough money to go, say, like on a class trip, like the whole class trip is going, but you don't have your family doesn't have the $25 to pay for the ticket to go, so you got to sit at home. Like all of that stuff adds up. Like your family doesn't have money to go on a vacation. Like that's traumatic. I think is poverty is one of the most traumatic things that could happen to a child.
Do you feel like you've done like some sort of therapy and stuff targeted at that? Because like to address the kind of like poverty mindset or lack mentality kind of stuff. Because
Oh,
I know
100%.
that's something I've been personally working on because we've had periods of life that have been more wealthy than others, and some that are like I can relate to some of the stuff that you're talking about at times in life. And I notice I'm doing that work now because it's like I know that I am intelligent, I have a ton to offer the world, I have like amazing connections and amazing education and platforms, so lucky in all these ways. But then I'll see like the relationship with money directly where I see that kind of like lack mentality come up and I'm actively addressing it. So I guess to me it seems like you must have done work around that coming from such an impoverished background and then being where you're at right now with your career. What kind of work would you say that is?
Just talking to somebody and telling them how you feel, and get like realizing that it's okay to be like that, but then it's not like even I don't think you ever stop working on yourself with the problems that you've had. Like I had this issue where And every now and then it comes around as like, so when I was younger and I would say go to like a friend's birthday party or this or that, like sometimes I wasn't allowed to go to the parties because of my dad. They're like, we don't want that over at the house. So that was a child, this is put into my head. So like, say if I were to come visit you and you were like, I can't find my paintbrush, and you really lost it. In my head, I'm thinking that you think I stole the paintbrush. So now I start getting paranoid. Like she thinks I stole the paintbrush. She's got to find that paintbrush, or else she's going to think that I stole it. I went like that for decades until I finally talked to the therapist about it. And even so far as like seeing money in a cash register and like wishing that I had all that money, especially when I was broke. But I never thought it. Let me try to put it in a different phrase. That like every now and then I'd want to take all the money and keep it, like just to take it, and then I feel bad about it. And I told my therapist about it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I said sometimes I see a whole bunch of money and I want to take it. And he goes, did you ever take it? And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, everybody sees a lot of money, they want to have it for themselves. It's normal. He goes, the difference between them and you is you didn't take it, and you does everybody else. It's the small few that can't control themselves. So it's all about, I think, control and knowing what, like I said before, what's right and wrong. Um, so that's how I'm in on that issue. But therapy, I think, and talking about it and realizing that, like, not everybody's out to get me. Not everybody's thinks I'm a thief. It was so bad. Like, if I would see a policeman coming, I would walk the other way because I think that he's going to put me in jail because I'm associated with my dad. Meanwhile, I've never met the cop before. He doesn't know who I am. This is just all in my head as a kid.
Yeah, wow. So that must be like quite a lot of would you say therapy has been your main kind of mechanism for working through that?
Therapy, keeping myself in shape, keeping myself busy, um, being able to be with myself alone without crazy thoughts, I think is therapy. Is calming that madness that I had before. Every now and then, like I said, if I don't talk to somebody about it, it flares up. Like if I'm home for long periods of time, like I start to think about the stuff like when I was a kid, and then it starts to trigger, not, it doesn't trigger anger, it just triggers like woe is me, and I don't like to have that feeling like we talked about before. Like I don't want to ever be a victim again, and I don't think I ever will. um, but I think, like I said, just therapy, keeping myself busy, thinking positive, surrounding yourself with positive people, um, surrounding yourself with intelligent people. um, as crazy as my dad was, he gave me a lot of small pieces of advice, like never quit, you are who you hang out with smarter people, don't hang out with somebody that's less intelligent than you are. Either they're on your intelligence level or they're greater, so you can better yourself. um, Compassion towards other people, um, helping other people. I think Angelo had one of the best sayings ever was, it don't cost nothing to be nice. Just be nice to people, because once you put out that positive energy, you get positive energy back. When you live with a lot of anger, then that's who you're going to hang out with, and that's who I hang out with when I was as kids. And then I'll tell you a quick story. Like, I think the biggest change around was I was hanging out with this kid that I went to middle school, and I knew him since middle school and high school, and then we just had a friendship through our early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. And I started going away to fights with Angelo, and he'd always watch my dog at the time. Um, and I went away, and then normally he would pick me up at the airport, drop me off, and then just leave. And then this one night he goes, oh, I'm going to come in. And I remember I knew something was wrong. I'm like, why does he want to come in? He never wants to come in. It was late night too. It was like 11, 12. And I come in and there's a check on my table. And he's like, oh, I borrowed money from you. And I'm like, borrow money from you? I'm like, I didn't, I didn't have any money in the house. And I'm like, what money? And he's like, oh, I used your credit card. And I'm like, my credit card? And I'm like, ugh. I'm like, I would always keep a credit card for emergencies. And I'm like, well, what did you use my credit card for? And he started laughing. He goes, oh, well, our other friend thinks it's funny. I'm like, dude, what did you use my credit card for? And at this time, I'm living in a guest house So the guest house, you had to go past the main house, and it was like a lady, her husband, and like her young daughter. And he keeps laughing, and I'm like, dude, what did you use my credit card for? And he went and he called an escort agency and had hookers over to my house using my credit card. I went crazy. I'm just like, so now I'm tied to an escort agency. I'm like, just get out. And I'm just like, and that was the last of it. And then he was one of those types that was angry too. So we'd go out for nightclubs, and he'd always get into the fist fights and start fights. And once I cut him out of my life, I think, and I started putting the positive people that I just talked about around, it made things a lot better for me.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson. Cutting out the people. I think, especially if you're, I don't know, I think there's different reasons for it, but I can relate with that, like just looking for the good in people. And now also identifying, like working on boundaries and stuff like that. But just tolerating having someone in your life, even though you know that they're just bringing you down, sometimes, even if it's just energetically, but usually
Yeah.
trickles from that. The benefit of just cutting those people out. And like the compassionate side in me is like, oh, but they need good people in their life too. But also, I guess that's when like people say sometimes it's good to be selfish because you just it's like if you have a on you and you're in the ocean, you're just gonna sink yourself too and that person. So
Yeah.
um and what about like your life now obviously is drastically different from your upbringing. How do you find it is for you being in a reality where you're surrounded by super well-known, super successful people, in like
I'm in shock every day that I wake up. like like we recently took a trip to Italy. I think it was like 3 weeks ago, and we took a private plane from LA to Italy. Like I would have never dreamed that in my life. And the person that took me on the trip, even him, is as famous as he is, like he's always humble. He's like, "Do you believe we're on a private plane going to Italy?" He's like, "How great is our lives right now?" Like, and just from that sentence, he's like, "How great is our lives?" He doesn't say, "How great is my life?" He's like, he includes you in everything in the group of people that he hangs around with. It's always us. It's not just all about him. Like, and he's very humble, and like I would never like. And then I sort of talked to my other friend that went along with it afterwards, and he's like, "How many times have you think you've been on a private plane?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he goes, "I think we've been on private planes at least 50 times." I never thought I'd be on a regular plane more than 10 times, let alone a private plane. Like, and it just shows you, man, if you're nice to everybody and you treat everybody with compassion and you help people and you give back, it all comes back to you. So like I said, I'm in shock with a lot of the things that are going on in my life, and I hope that I always have that feeling of like being a child and seeing something new. Because every time I do something, I'm like, can't get any better than this, and then it turns out that I having better experiences. I'm like, this is just wonderful. Like I say, maybe the first half of my life was horrible, and like maybe the universe is like, okay, we put him through enough. He's not a crazy lunatic like his dad. But now it's time to give back to him, and then he's going to have to give back to other people, which I try to do as much as I can. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I try to help people out where I can, whether it's just listening, giving advice, giving money when I can, um, and just positive experiences, or maybe introducing them to somebody that I think that would be positive in their lives. Because being a trainer, Angela always told me, and I think your dad will agree, and I know he will, is like sometimes trainers and fighters don't get along, so you have to separate ways, and they'll find a trainer that they get along better than you, and you'll find a fighter that you mesh with better, and there's no hard feelings about it.
yeah. Yeah, that's so would you attribute like your success, let's say everybody has a different level of success, but I think being surrounded by lovely, humble, beautiful, thriving humans and you being those things as well, to me, you're living a successful life. So
Yeah,
would you attribute that to like what you were saying, just basically being kind and like
I,
giving back where you can?
I think so. I think that you should give back tenfold if you can, hundredfold, and just being nice to people. Like, look, there's a lot of wealthy people in this world that are just motherfuckers. They're angry. They're nasty people, but they could have all the money, but they're not happy. They could pretend that they're happy. Like you see these homes where over here in Beverly Hills where they have these, they're like 50,000 square feet. And there's like three people living in there. I'm thinking like, how unhappy is that person that they had to build themselves a 50,000 square foot house, that their lives are that empty? Like, people don't look at things. They think a lot of people that don't know. I think a majority of people think that having a 50,000 square foot house is going to make you happy. It's not. Give me like a give me a 2 or 3 bedroom house with, like a place to put all my motorcycles. I'm happy. like like but like these people like that building these homes and going on these yachts and stuff that they're never going to use, and it's just all for show because they're just unhappy people. So I think just being nice to everybody, and like I had a football player I trained. I'm going to say his name too, Jamar Taylor. Um, every day after training, he would tell me, "Coach, I appreciate you." And I remember the first time he said it, like I was just like, "What?" And I said, "Huh?" And he's like, "Coach, I appreciate you." And ever since he said that to me, I say that to everybody, and everybody I say that to has the same reaction that that I had when I first heard it. So
Such a
I
great
think that's a
example of something you can give that doesn't cost anything. And it's just like what Angelo was saying about like kindness doesn't cost anything or whatever, like saying just that you appreciate someone. I feel like most people probably go through life feeling a bit underappreciated.
yeah.
Um,
Angelo taught me that. So I'll tell you a quick story. Angelo, it was the first time I was driving Angelo in a car, and Angelo, we go through the toll booth. This is when you actually had to deal with people at a toll booth and pay the money. So we go up to the toll booth. I give the lady the money. I'm sorry, my little dog is crying to get out of the room.
it's
He'll be
okay.
back in 2 minutes, crying back. But so I give the lady the money, and we're driving down the road, and Angelo punches me in the arm. He goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, I'm looking around like, did I cut somebody off? What did I do? And he goes, I'm like, what did I do? And he's like, that poor lady's in there all day. You don't even ask her how her day's doing and tell her thank you for doing your job. And like he goes into this whole rant, and I'm just like, I felt so horrible. And then from then on, every time I went to a toll booth, I was literally having conversations with the toll booth person and like the people behind me are honking the horn, and I'm just like, well, have a great day. And they had to be looking at me like I was some lunatic. Like, but I do that. Like I go to the store, like everybody that I speak to at the store, like the cashiers, I'm like, hey, how's your day going? Hope you have a great day. Thanks. I appreciate you. And the look on their face is like total shock. Even when you deal with, say, customer service on the phone, who I think they have to have the worst job ever because you have every irate person that is angry at the world taking all their frustrations out on that poor person on the other line. And I'm like, well, I hope you have a wonderful day. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your time and patience. And there's like a moment of silence. They're like, wow, thank you. You have a great day too. I appreciate you too. Like something little like that, like can change the whole person's whole day.
Yeah, totally. 100%. I think even just paying attention to people sometimes, I've been told that before, like, wow, you have such a capacity to just pay attention to people. I think, like, I don't know, there's so much stimulation around all the time that sometimes we can be like overstimulated to the max and just have a hard time even paying attention to listening to someone in a conversation. And yeah, feeling appreciated or heard or seen or valued, it just goes so far.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about for somebody who is like, for example, myself, I know I have athletic genes. My parents are both athletic. Whenever I do sports, it's like I'm pretty decent at them. But I've always just had this kind of like not very much motivation to do sports because I'm like, oh, I'm naturally fit. I don't really need to kind of thing. But I've noticed that like with my mental health, if it's struggling and then if I exercise, it really helps my mental health. And now recently I've been feeling inspired. Actually, in the podcast or in the breathwork session with Michael Alajade, he was like, "Yeah, you were so great in that training session. Like, you just were badass. You rocked it." And just that made me think of like that was probably one of the only real serious exercises I've done in a while, and it really felt good to just feel empowered and like in tune with my body. So I'm feeling recently more inspired to exercise, but it's like, you just do the push-ups and the squats and stuff like that. Or what would be advice that you would have for someone who's like maybe not fully integrating fitness and exercise into their lives that wants to do that?
I would just start out easy. Like I had this guy that I was training. He was really heavy. I think he was like 360, 370 pounds, and he could barely walk through his parking lot. It would take us an hour to walk through a parking lot, which wasn't big. And we would walk for a few steps, take a rest, walk for a few steps, take a rest. And I said, dude, just give me an inch a day. Give me 1 inch more a day, and I'll get you to where you want to go. And it's the same thing, man. That inch turns into a foot turns into a yard, and then you're at a quarter of a mile, half a mile, full 3/4 of a mile. Now you're running like a 5K, then a 10K, and you're at a half marathon, you're at a full marathon. So I think that if you start out slow and then kind of trick your body into doing more than what you can just by slowly adding stuff onto the workout, like maybe you might work out one day for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then do 10 minutes for the week, add another 2 or 3 minutes on. Before you know it, you're at an hour workout and it's going by like nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously, yeah, you could just like watch YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's probably better to do an in-person session with you, for example, for somebody who wants to like learn more. So is that something, but I like that advice and that's inspiring for me. I have a yoga mat and I'm actually like in the middle of doing my yoga teacher training. So I like yoga because it's like meditation-y and stretch, but
Yeah.
also sometimes it's nice to just do like a more hardcore workout in that. So would you, was I gonna say, adding a little bit every day, and would you like, do you train more for like feeling good, feeling optimal and like high energy and stuff? Or are you training a lot of people that are more like for specific physique or physical kind of results?
I think in the beginning it always starts out as they just want to look good and have the physique. And then once they get the physique and they start feeling good about themselves, I think it gives people a lot of confidence. Like I train a lot of business people. There's two guys that I train, and like all my other friends that are trainers, like, you're insane for getting up that early and going to train these guys. Like I'm up at 3:45 every morning, 3:30, 3:45. And then my first session starts at about sometimes 4:45, 4:30. And they're like, why do you do it? And I'm like, because now I just beat everybody. In my head, and then in the like they own major corporations, and they're like, I don't think the owner of this corporation is getting up as early as I did. Like sometimes I come home and it's 10 o'clock, and I'm like, and I feel a little bit tired, and I'm just like, why am I so tired? I'm like, hey, dum dum, you've been up for about 6 hours, 7 hours. Like most people are just getting their day started at 10. They're just getting warmed up, and I'm like, man, I'm done. Like, so I think it just gives you a sense of confidence. Like, you've accomplished more than what everybody else has like, okay, I think accomplishing while you're sleeping, so keep on sleeping. So, and I think that's the competitive edge of me from playing sports. And I think that the guys that I train that are getting up that early are like, okay, my competitors aren't getting up this early to work out. And like I had one of the guys tell me that he goes into meetings, and he says and he's a big dude, and he says he just feels he could look at everybody, and everybody's intimidated in the room. He knows that he's going to win them over in the meeting because there's a sense of intimidation. And it might not be, it might be far from the truth, but he just has in his head that he says he looks at everybody in the room and he goes, man, he goes, I know I can kick all their asses. He goes, I'm never going to do it. He goes, but it gives me that edge. Like, so he says he walks into the room. He just feels like I'll beat everybody's butt in here. He's the sweetest guy. He'll never do it, but it just gives him that sense of confidence. Like, and I feel that way too. Like, I feel like if I don't do boxing or something like that, I feel like, but that goes back to the childhood. It's like I feel like I can't protect myself. Like if I go on a subway and something goes wrong, like I can't protect myself because I'm not in shape. But I think you just get a good feeling. I mean, who doesn't want to look good? Who doesn't want to have a good physique? Like, I don't know. Like that might be just a closed way of thinking, but that's the way I think of. Like, I like to look at my body. Like, I like to have a good body. Like, I want to be in shape. Like, I want to be healthy. I want to live a long life. Like, I don't want to, like, I see some of these, like, there's one older guy. I don't know if you've ever met him. I think your dad's met him. His name's Maledick. He's 84 years old, and he owns a company called Southern Wines and Spirits. He trained with me for over a decade. Into his, I think when he turned 80 is when I had left, or 79 or something like that. He gets up every day, suit and tie, and goes to work. And then you see some 80-year-old people, 84 years old, they got tubes up their nose. They're walking hunched over. They're in a wheelchair, and they're just not taking care of themselves. And I think Angela used to get really mad when the people that would interview him saying, when are you going to retire? When are you going to retire? And he goes, retire? He goes, when I'm fucking dead, that's when I'm going to retire. And he's right. Like, all the people that retire, I think there's like a statistic that they don't last like 4 years or 5 years, they're dead. Like, what are you going to, you got to keep your mind busy. I think a healthy mind is a healthy body, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, when it gives you something to keep going. I know my grandpa, the one that was a rodeo clown, he literally died like after doing an 8-day rodeo, 3 performances a day. And the last night he went back to his hotel room and his heart stopped in his sleep. But I mean, he definitely lived a life he was passionate about every day.
Yeah, doing something he was happy. Like, who wants to die just sitting around in your house doing nothing all the time? Like, it's just like when I had first moved, like it wasn't working for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I was just like, I got to do something. Like, I don't know how people sit around and don't work. Like, you have to, like, even if you can't get a job, go volunteer. Like, like I said, the idle mind is the devil's playground. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I feel that. I believe that as well. So if somebody who's listening to this wants to work with you or like work out with you, what is the best way to go about it? Just reach out like on your Instagram or?
Reach out on Instagram, MB_boxing. Shoot me a message, man. I'm humble. I try to answer every single DM that I get, or email or phone call. Like, if I don't get back to you right away, I apologize. I just, sometimes life gets in the way, but I won't not return your message.
Yay. So for everybody watching this, get in touch with Matt. He's an awesome human and a badass, in case you can't tell already from the past hour of us conversing about life. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time and just for making the time to do the breathwork session and this conversation. It's been really nice to spend time with you on here, and I'm really grateful for you sharing your story and just to see how you've overcome all these crazy hurdles and you're just thriving and rocking it and being a great person. So
I appreciate you. Yeah, I'm grateful too. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad we got to catch up. And I think everybody should definitely jump into your breathing exercises. So I think you should definitely give her a call for that. And I know I'm definitely gonna do it. But I hope that I could help somebody out there. And if you ever have any, just want to call, you need a friend to listen to, man, hit me up on Instagram, man. You need to vent a little bit. I'm here. Like I said, you have to give back, because I don't think I would be where I'm at if people didn't give back to me. I think there's different stages in my life where I had different mentors or people that touched me. And I think everybody needs that. So feel free to give me a shout. Or Bailey, she's great, man. I've known her since a long time now. God, man, I think it's been over 10 years, right? It's got to be over 10 years now. Like time goes by quick.
Great.
But thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here on this podcast with you, and I'm excited for when you launch yours.
Yep, soon.
So lots of love. Have a beautiful day,
You
and
too.
eat some LA tacos for me.
I will. Bye, Bailey.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, biohackers, that was an awesome episode. Thank you so much for being here and present and active on this adventure. I would love to connect further with you. If you go to biohackwithbailey.com, you can sign up for the newsletter and we can connect more deeply through that avenue. Also, if you like what you've been hearing in this episode, please do take a moment to leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Also, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends and family if you feel so compelled to. You are invited. This is your official invitation to do so. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Love you lots. And remember to breathe and enjoy the magical moments of life. See you later. Peace out, A-Town. Do, 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 do. Yeah.